Before we get into today's video, I just want to let you guys know we are on part 8 of our Delta Pokemon design poll. Make sure to vote if you haven't. Deadline's on Monday, and thanks for watching the video. So we're back on the glorious website of smogon.com/forums, and yeah, by the video title, this is talking about the dumbest post on Smogon in 2025, and it's actually not the post where Tufa the ZUTL got demoted by upper staff. We're not actually going to be discussing that one, but you know, this I need a bit more context regarding this one. But what we are going to be covering is a post by Peng, who is a I would say I know them because like they're black-white player, so like they're black-white player. But they made a post called "What is the purpose of sample teams?" And as you can see by the ratios here, most of these reacts were haha reacts. And if you guys don't know about the Smogon forums meta in terms of reactions, haha is basically like getting ratioed on like Twitter or some shit. So yeah, obviously a lot of people did not like what Peng had in the opening post here. And yeah, we're gonna be going over this post because realistically, I'm gonna give Peng the benefit of the doubt here. I'm gonna be good faith about this because I kind of just skimmed through everything, read the comments. I was like, well, this post is pretty fucking stupid, isn't it? But you know, in the first sentence, they fully acknowledge that they're gonna be clowned for the take. But yeah, we're gonna be getting into it. But yeah, if you guys do enjoy this video, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, join the kingdom. We are now 81 subscribers away from 1,000 subscribers, and we're almost there. We're gonna be keep uploading and all of that good stuff. July has started. Also, happy 4th of July to all the Americans. Again, it's just a regular ass day for me, but America, I guess. But yeah, cool. So let's actually go into Peng's post, talk about it a little bit, and then just like dissect how like somewhat silly it is, to be honest. But yeah, let's do it. Fully anticipated being clowned for my take here, but here goes. I think there is a risk sample teams have lost sight of what they were originally intended to be, an intro to the tier for new players. Now shifted into a different purpose, almost eclipsing the need for players to learn team building at all and removing what used to be a fundamental skill check. Now, I'm going to speak about the point of, well, this is their main argument, like this is their main point, and obviously they're going to explain their reasoning behind their logic. But let's go into what sample teams actually are. So sample teams, you have formats on Smogon, whether that's the usage-based tiering from OU to ZU, or you have OMs like stab, almost any ability, and pretty much any other format. If anyone wants to try and get into that format, they need to understand a few things. They need to understand the Pokemon that are legal on that tier. They need to understand what the Pokemon are actually running in that tier, what is actually the best Pokemon in that tier, and also just other nuances like items and everything. Like, you want to know everything about a tier in order to play as effectively as possible, which increases your probability of winning a game. So sample teams for new players are a way of people understanding what is actually in that tier, what are the main sets that Pokemon run in that tier, and trying to understand why Pokemon are doing what they do. And they have been a very essential part of competitive Pokemon singles. Like, I can't speak much on VGC. There's probably VGC sample teams, like rental teams, that have been added since Generation 8. So I guess those count as, you know, VGC sample teams. But in singles, sample teams are just pretty much one of the best way for new players to try and understand the format. Now, Peng believes now that sample teams have removed the ability for new players to actually team build effectively and try things out. And yeah, like basically saying team building is not being learned at all when you know, you have sample teams into the mix, which I have to wholly just disagree with, because I don't really think that completely eclipses the need for team building. At least I'll speak for my perspective on things. I never really used sample teams when I started playing this game. I was a guy that was willing to experiment no matter how bad or how good my idea sounded. And even when I started the game, you know, when I was a freaking teenager, I was like, cool, this might not work, but we're gonna give it a shot anyway. And there were some ideas where I believed were good and they were bad. You know, it's just how it was, trial and error. And I think a lot of people, if they really want to try and get better at this game, if they really want to get good at a tier, that you have to go through that trial and error. And sample teams, obviously, you're not going to have that trial and error if you're given a good team that's consistent. Because at the end of the day, I've stated in many videos that there are two aspects to competitive Pokemon: playing and team building. Sample teams obviously removes the team building aspect, because you have an alleged good team, and arguably he's going to be a good team if it's a sample team. So it's really coming down to you. If you lose games, like, you could obviously chalk that up to getting a bad matchup, but most of the time sample teams are going to have even matchups. And if you lose a game, that's going to be on you as a player and you'll realize, oh, well, the team is good. So obviously I did not play the game to the best of my ability. Therefore, I'm going to get better at playing. Now, going back to the trial and error thing, if you really want to get good at competitive Pokemon or any format that you're interested in, you're going to have to do that trial and error in the builder as well, because to a certain extent, I don't think people are going to be satisfied with, yeah, I'm going to take out half of what makes competitive Pokemon by never building a single team in my life. That is not what the point of sample teams are. The point of sample teams are for a new player to understand the fact that, you know, I can realize what's in this tier, how the tier dynamics work, what can I expect from the metagame at large, figure out the intricacies and all the little things about a metagame, then attempt a team build. You know, that's at least the common line that should be treaded when you're playing in a new format or getting started with competitive Pokemon, whether that's in OU, UU, or any other fuck off tier. That's just how it is. So the fact that you're saying that team building is automatically just going to be gone from the skills of newer players because they're just going to rely on samples all the time, I just believe that's not really likely, because eventually a new player would want to try and build their own team, because that's just a part of playing competitive Pokemon. But anyway, let's go on to Peng's point, because I already kind of just, I'm not going to say I dismantled the first point, but I'm telling you my perspective on why the like alleged point of, you know, team building being as a skill being eliminated due to samples is just kind of a weird, like it's a weird point to make. But yeah, they're black white main, like I stated at the start of the video. I can really only talk for black white samples here. I thought it might be making it worth a PR thread in case there are any similar feelings across other gens tiers and whether we can learn or adapt something. At least in black and white OU, the current 17 sample teams are incredibly good and cover practically every major team archetype. This might not be the case in other metagames, and maybe your samples are outdated and therefore we don't have the same issue. Yeah, sometimes there are outdated samples in certain tiers. I would love to see some new Orochi UU sample teams, but again, I'm building 100% of the teams that I use in that tier myself. So you know, just an example. But yeah, sample teams do have issues of being outdated. You know, meta shifts happen. It particularly applies a lot to usage-based tiering, where the tiering like changes every 3 months. So you kind of just have to update samples, especially if there's been significant meta game shifts, like we just got in July. Mungus is in PU now, bro. So you know, like taking that into account. Again, it's not like the main point. It's just something I wanted to bring up. But black white, the samples are all good and they all cover everything you want. 9 sand teams, blah blah blah. This is obviously just black white context, which isn't really necessary. But the bold thing here, which is written in bold, this is no longer about giving new players an intro to the game. It's giving them every single resource they need to enter a tournament and be immediately competitive with no meta familiarity or further work required. What? What do you mean no meta game familiarity? Are you seriously trying to imply that a random guy can just sign up to the next black and white OU tournament, know nothing about it, not play a single game, and they can still manage to win? Well, it could be possible if you're actually like decent at the game, but the point of sample teams again are for new players. Is a new player going to have any sort of intricacies regarding black and white OU? Potentially and debatably one of the harder OUs to get into? No. So the fact that you're saying that they can start, you know, winning in tournaments and actually have like a good shot of winning, like, and sample teams gets rid of the fact that they have to not know the metagame is just false, because they do have to know the metagame. They're gonna test their team on a black and white OU ladder, and it's even worse for OUs, because OUs, every single OU from Gen 1 to Gen 9, excluding LGPE, which is Let's Go Pikachu and even BDSP, there are ladders for every OU. So obviously you're going to test your team, even if it is a sample, just to understand how the team works. So I really don't get this point. But anyway, moving on. I don't think it's surprising that this year's Black White Cup has seen a huge number of R1 upsets. New players unfamiliar to the tier have access to almost all the same resources that long-time top players that self-build do, right down to the perfectly optimized EV spreads and techs that they could have not discovered on their own. Yeah, that's just how it's gonna be. That's just how it's gonna be. Like, is that a problem? Are you upset that top players are losing to like worse players? Is that a problem? Because at the end of the day, even in our tiering policy framework, it says the better player, we aim to have a game where the better player wins most of the time. And to be fair, if you are a top player and you're losing to someone that isn't that good at, like, worse at the game, surely in that context of that entire set, you weren't the better player because you lost. So that like I'm just, it's hard for me to comprehend like why they're thinking like this. And you know, a lot of the comments responses were, you know, bringing out potential elitism with the tour scene, which again is why I don't really dabble much into the tour. Like all the Smogon forum sort of dramas, like, I don't care. I just play the game, bro. Like I sign up for tournaments, I want to win. I keep things very, very simple. So it kind of just it hurts my brain a little bit. Like I actually feel like a headache coming, because I really don't understand the point of this post. I really just don't understand it. But yeah. The unfortunate reality of this game is that it has a relatively low skill ceiling, and anyone coming to the game with baseline Pokemon knowledge and the top team has potential to cause an upset with a decent matchup or a bit of luck. Excluding luck, because at the end of the day, RNG is RNG and it's the game we play. What is the issue with causing upsets? Like, do better then. Do better. If you're losing round one, do better. Like, how is this an issue? Why is this an issue? I don't get it. But yeah. There's a fine line to draw between making the game accessible for new players and giving out so many highly optimized and tournament-ready teams that they truly don't need to set foot on the team builder at all. Now, this is the only thing that kinda I could see. Well, it's not even that I'm seeing their point. I still don't see their point. I think it's stupid. But like the argument saying that they're never realistically going to use the team builder because they just have teams. That is something I can see. But again, like, let's get on to the, you know, proposal and all of their things. My suggestion, followed by a colon. Sample teams need to exist, but we probably have too many of them. Sometimes when I bring up this topic, it suggests that I simply need to make sure I have good matchups into all of the samples, knowing that everyone has access to them. This is not realistic when there are 17 of them and they're all modern and strong. If sample teams are truly about giving players a taste of the tier, then they don't need 3 versions of Alakazam offense. They just need starting points to know what the strongest strategies are and encouragement to explore other options to themselves. 10 samples would be plenty, perhaps even too many. Again, this is genuinely just waffle. If there's a reason why Black White OU has 17 samples, I mean, that's good that you have a wide range of teams to choose from and like seeing different archetypes being played out. Again, like 10 samples is not even that much, but again, I digress. Assuming you have 3 teams for at least archetypes as such as HO, bulky offense, stall, and balance, that's already over 10 teams. So, and that's like 3 minimum for the archetypes I just mentioned. So again, 10 teams is pretty small if you're taking it into account. Sample teams could also just be less optimized. So you want to make sample teams worse just because you're upset that good tour players are losing in round 1 because their players decided to use good teams. I think BKC, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I don't watch BKC often. If I'm watching any PokeTuber, it's realistically like Jimothy Cool sometimes, Moxie boosted, Blunder of course, and PokeAim. But for a few BKC videos I've seen, he doesn't like the culture of people just being past teams, and fair enough. Like again, it seems like Peng doesn't like that culture as well, of people being past teams and them just playing the game piloting. Again, if you're a good player, again, at the end of the day, you're playing the game, and if you aren't team building, if you're not trying to improve your team building skill, fair enough. But playing, at the end of the day, playing is the most important, because you're gonna win or you're gonna lose, and if you win, that's good. That's all that matters. So I don't know, but why make sample teams less optimized? That again, that doesn't make sense. I know this sounds elitist and horrible. Yes, it is elitist and horrible. I'm happy you have some sort of self-awareness about this. But since returning to the game in 2021, this has been an annoyance. Cope, I guess. Like, I'm sorry I'm acting like this, but like again, you want to have worse sample teams that are less optimizers, especially imagine a tier like ADV, which has very intricate EV spreads for specific reasons regarding the Pokemon in this tier. And you're just like, yeah, we're just gonna go 252 HP, 252 attack Tyranitar, because we don't want the newer players to know like the best optimal sets in ADV OU. Like, that was also something that I realized as well when I was playing ADV OU back in 2019, 2020. The fact that their EVs were so like intricate, there was a lot of things going on with certain ones like Salamence, Doug Trio, Tyranitar, Celebi, Jirachi, and so on. And the fact that you just want to default that to 252, 252 spreads is frankly ridiculous. And I don't get it. But anyway, people are accustomed to handouts and are entitled. I think I'm done reading this post genuinely. Like, my head is hurting. Maybe it's because I haven't eaten or I didn't get enough sleep. It could be both. But yeah, let's get into this. UT, are you arguing that good sample teams make tiers too accessible and that we should make it harder for new players to learn or pick up the tier? That's just what it exactly sounds like. I feel like the point he's making is that new players shouldn't solely rely on samples and only use as a starting point. number one, there's no way of proving whether new players are solely like, again, we're making statements that are like factual. Like, we're assuming that new players are just going to use samples for the rest of the time that they're playing the game. They're going to sign up and continue using samples. Now, can I say that there's like 0 people that are going to do that? No, not really. But at the same time, eventually a new player will want to use different teams. And in terms of using different teams, either they're going to go out of their way to go into like different tournament threads, team dumps and so on to find new teams because they can't be bothered to build, or you know what, they're going to build. So I don't get it. But yeah, I think this take is fairly reasonable. But even if the extreme happened and sample teams got abolished or they weren't that good, people would just get teams from their friends. Then it becomes a case of only being able to have access to the best resources by being in the right circles. With Smogon tournament, Smogon tournament scene already has issues of being very cliquey, and Smogon in general anyway. Like, people just have their groups, and if you're not a part of their group, you're like whatever. So again, which I have experienced. But yeah, this, like, samples might be too good. Disagree with gatekeeping new players. Again, there's no issues with samples being too good. Why is this an issue? Like, you can't give me like a logical reasoning why samples being as good as like teams being built by the top players is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It really isn't. If the goal of Smogon is to gatekeep new players from having adequate teams to start out, sure, this post makes sense. You keep alluding to a frustration surrounding good players losing to samples in tours, which definitely isn't a way to approach the conversation on how to improve resources for people to build better teams of their own. I can't speak for every tier and every generation, but surely a couple variations of standard teams / archetypes is fine to have in the sample thread, and the goal when building shouldn't be to beat every single sample. It should be to build the best team for the most matchups in general. If I want to get involved in tiers I don't play, it's a lot easier to just nab a sample and figure out on the fly what the EVs are for, then going to some tournament replay and usage thread, figuring out common archetypes myself and trying to guess based on calcs. Like, again, like I stated, sample teams are for helping new players. Like, even someone like Flampoke, I'm pretty sure I'm in a team right now for them. I forgot what team tour we're in together right now. They're in a team called of mine somewhere. But like, people have their own like, they're not a new player in the slightest. I'm also not a new player, but I would be a new player for a format that I've never played. Like, if you're to try and slap me into Gen 9 NU right now, I'm probably looking at samples because fuck Terror and I don't know anything about Gen 9 NU. So again, I don't know. But I agree with the idea that people are becoming incredibly reliant on others, team building more than they used to be. But what policy would we implement to even curb this? There's nothing you can do. Like, it's just a thing that you're gonna have to cope with. It's simple as. I understand your concern fully that team building is a skill and should be more sought after. However, I can't agree with the conclusion that sample teams should be limited in any way to try and encourage that. I really don't think it makes logical sense that if sample teams are limited, then new players will instead try to build their own team. It's likely that people with friends / social circles will just get teams that way. Again, like, the issue, like, trying to fix sample teams doesn't fix this issues. Big names get knocked out of round 1 on tour because everyone has Volt Kong HR and is a crit away from being anything. If a team style is a crit away from winning every game, that might just be a problem with Black White OU rather than sample teams. Yeah, that might just be a Black White OU issue. The player with the sample is already at disadvantage. Yeah, like, if you realize your opponent's using the sample, literally find the sample of the format you're playing and go from there, and you can just play around the fact that you know what the Pokemon are. Fair enough if you have a bad matchup into that sample regardless, but if the matchup is even and you know what your opponent has on your side, the element of surprise that competitive Pokemon does kind of have sometimes when you're playing any format, well, that is just kind of gone for your opponent, so you're automatically just at a disadvantage. Why would you not want to give new players the best resources possible? The best way to learn the game is by playing it. This seems like a huge non-issue. Exactly. Please don't kneecap players in their most formative stages of engaging because Gotonator couldn't get a good matchup against XX new player, XX sample team spamming round 1 of Black White Cup. Giving newcomers straight up suboptimal spreads in the sample sounds comically malicious. So yeah, pretty much every single post here is just clowning on this take, and to be fair, I don't really need to go through the rest. I think I've really gotten my point across. The post, like, overall, Peng's post just seems like, oh man, like, us as we shouldn't be losing to worse people that we consider worse than us because they get teams as good as us. I mean, that's just compared to Pokemon in general. You're gonna have a good team. You could be a good player, and whether you win or lose, that's just how the game is. And if you're mad about that, just don't lose. Just don't lose. If a new player beats you by using a good team, good on the new player. It shows that they have the capability to get even better at the game. And yeah, it just seems like it is elitist. I'm happy you realized it's elitist, and there's nothing else I really have to say. I do think this is probably one of the dumbest posts I've read, and I'm happy that the community at large are smart enough to realize that, yeah, this is a pretty stupid fucking proposal. But yeah, thanks for watching, you guys. Let me know down below what you think of. Don't know if I needed to make this 20 minutes, but there was a lot I need to talk about. I can be opinionated when it comes to this shit. If you guys want to see some more Smogon forum based sort of content where I just discuss different posts, let me know down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.